From being one of the most successful indie films ever made to losing Paramount over $70 million, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise has had a long, turbulent history.
Today we'll be investigating the ups and downs of the live-action TMNT franchise and determining which is the best movie and which is the worst. But first, he's Inspector Keto.
And he's Detective Mio.
And the investigation begins in the late 1980s.
Major League Butt Kicking is back in town! Oh yeah!
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ended up being an indie film, although this wasn't originally planned. Bigger companies like Disney and Warner Brothers turned down the film, possibly because of the commercial failure that was mastered in the universe just 3 years ago. The movie eventually found distribution from New Line Cinema, which at the time was a smaller company known for B movies.
The turtle suits were made by Jim Henson's Creature Company, and Jim Henson said that it was the most advanced project he had ever worked on. Cutting-edge animatronic technology was used in the costumes to achieve the really expressive face masks. These masks featured internal animatronic components like the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows that could be all controlled by a skilled technician using a computer. The computer had the ability to encode various facial expressions such as anger, awe, happiness, and delight, which were mapped to keys on the joystick and held by the technician. To capture the realistic lip movements, a special helmet was equipped with cameras and worn by the technicians while pronouncing the phrases. Then the data was transferred to the mechanical lips and integrated into the mask.
Pretty high tech.
Indeed. Because people needed to control the faces at all times via the remotes, they built some of the sets special so that they could hide the technicians inside. For instance, the turtles' home was built 4 feet off the ground so the puppeteers could control them from below, which would be much easier than trying to hide them in a closet or something. Despite working on the film, Henson stated that he didn't like the violence in the movie.
It is reported that each stuntman lost about 20 pounds while wearing the suit.
Talk about a weight loss plan.
All the suit actors got cameos in the movie. We'll go show some clips here.
122 and an 8.
We've been waiting for you, Miss O'Neill.
What the heck was that?
Josh Pays, I think that's how you say his name, who played Raphael, was the only person to be an actor and a voice actor. But he didn't like wearing the suit because he was claustrophobic, which is odd that he chose to be the actor, but whatever.
Jobs are hard to come by.
While the movie is more based on the original comics, they took some elements from the 80s cartoon, like different colored bandanas and liking pizza. The director, Steve Barron, was fired around the end of the production because the producer thought the film was too dark.
Seems a little too late to do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
During this one scene where this kid gets beat up by Tatsu, he was originally supposed to die.
So maybe the producers were right about it being too dark.
Instead, we see him cough a little bit to show that he's still alive. So maybe a better decision. There is one major issue with the suits that showed up in the final film, which is here where Donatello laughs and he opens his mouth just a bit too wide and it shows the actor's eyes.
That's actually really terrifying.
But don't worry, they'll deal with this issue in the future.
Due to budget constraints, some scenes had to be cut out of the movie itself, specifically in the beginning. There was originally going to be a long tracking shot where the turtles took to the rooftops, but that was replaced by the Foot Clan stealing things. And in the beginning fight, when they fight some of the Foot Clan, they break a light because they didn't have time to choreograph an actual fight.
They also shot a lot of this movie in North Carolina, which I'm guessing is cheaper than shooting in actual New York, and only a few of the occasional shots of New York were combined with New York-style sets. When
the film was released, it was a box office success, making $35 million opening weekend and over $200 million in total after going overseas. It was the 9th highest grossing movie in 1990, the highest grossing indie movie ever, and it was eventually dethroned only by the Blair Witch Project.
And another interesting note is that the UK censored some of the scenes in the movie featuring Mikey's nunchucks, probably because they were banned weapons in the UK.
This would be a problem that would plague the series for quite some time.
So, the first live-action TMNT, what do we think about it?
I think it's a very nice movie that it kind of stays true to the comic books while simultaneously having a lot more goofiness to kind of lighten up the mood.
Just like the 80s cartoon?
Yeah, so I think they definitely balanced that pretty well.
If you like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there's a lot in this movie to like. None of the characters were cringe or horrible. It had a great adaptation of all the turtles. All of them had distinct personalities. Casey Jones was adapted very well. April O'Neil was adapted very well.
And the Splinter puppet was pretty good as well.
Not creepy, as it easily could have been. The practical effects were absolutely amazing, and the animatronic technology still blows my mind.
I will say that the movie has a bit of 90s feel to it, for better or for worse.
A bit of that 90s funk.
Yeah, but overall, I think it's a very fun movie.
I'm gonna go interview our contact.
And I'm gonna go make a quick tier list because I had nothing better to do. The first movie, I believe, sets kind of the mark of like, this is peak TMNT, so for that reason, I am going to go give it an S. I really enjoyed the movie, and I think it definitely did the best in trying to adapt the TMNT comic books.
Thank you, Ray's Dashla, for cooperating with this investigation.
Happy to be back. I told you I'd be back.
Yes, I suppose. All right, we're going to start off with the first one. What do you think of the movie?
I mean, there's definitely a nostalgic vibe for some of it, but it's just good old-fashioned fun. I mean, like, for someone who knows Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was a good series to screen adaptation, in my opinion. You got to see the personalities, you got to see Shredder, the main villain, kind of in a very impressive way. I would say Shredder is something that sticks out to me in that movie. It was pretty, when I was younger, it was a little bit more frightening, I would say. The other part that I always stuck out was that that's the only movie they said damn in. Like, they're trying to be edgy. It was basically only Raphael saying it, but that's another thing that sticks out. But there were some fun fight scenes. The very end, the ending fight scene was also my favorite too.
Who's your favorite character?
Raphael went through a lot, but honestly, Michelangelo was probably the funniest to me. Yeah, I'd say Michelangelo's funny. He's got some good lines in that one.
Overall, how'd you say the movie is aged?
So I watched it with my friends recently. We're all in our 20s, and we were like, this is a fun time. I do think the suits are pretty impressive. The people who are wearing them, and also just the technology, like move the eyes and the mouth and everything, and how the technology behind that, I think was pretty impressive for its time. It looks better than some of the later animated movies that we saw, or supposedly live action quotation marks.
For the next movie, the creators for the original TMNT comics wanted to stick with a darker feel that the first movie had, but because there was some backlash against the violence scene in the previous movie, the producers went for a more lighthearted take, possibly even more lighthearted and goofy than the 80s cartoon. For that reason, the fight scenes are a lot sillier and one-sided than before, and they don't use their weapons as often. And there are a lot more jokes.
A few people didn't end up returning for their roles. Corey Feldman didn't return to voice Donatello because of substance abuse issues. April was recast because Judith Hogue reportedly complained about shooting schedules and too much violence, so she was forcibly replaced because no one wanted to deal with her. She was replaced by an actress who had soap drama history. And Casey Jones wasn't present at all because his mask was too scary for the little baby children.
Babies! They're babies!
I understand toning it down some of the violence, but scrapping major good guys seems like a bit of an overcorrection. He was replaced by the character Kino, whose actor was originally Donatello's stunt actor.
Funnily enough, the reported reason Rocksteady and Bebop weren't in the movie, as originally planned, was because the creators of the OG comic didn't want any goofy characters from the cartoon. So we got Tokka and Razar instead, who were voiced by Frank Welker. Originally, there was another scrapped idea that they would do the Baxter Stockman storyline with the Mousers, but out of concerns about how they were going to get those realistic robots on screen with such a low budget, they decided against it. So instead, they brought back the villain Shredder, or Super Shredder, and instead of Baxter Stockman, we got Dr. Perry, who in another twist that was eventually scrapped, he was supposed to be a Krang-like alien.
Because of the blooper with the eyes and the mask thing, they ended up sewing up the eye holes, meaning the actors were completely blind for action shots.
I can't see. What? Something's happened to my eyes. I can't see.
He had some assistance from the remote operators mentioned earlier, but other than that, they rehearsed all the fight scenes with the masks off, then practiced with the masks on, then they finally went and shot it for real. Shuttle scenes reportedly took about 30 takes.
That's a lot of takes. Despite having twice the budget of the first movie, this film didn't even make half the amount of money, with a budget and box office of $25 million and $78.6 million respectively. Still, the movie was a financial success, and a third movie was inevitable.
The film was dedicated to Jim Henson, who had died that year.
Rest in peace, Jim Henson.
TMNT Secret of the Ooze.
This is a good movie, again.
Yeah, it's definitely different from the first one, but I think it holds up in its own right.
Yeah, the flavor is very similar. It's just got more, I would say, of the 90s funk to it.
Yeah, definitely they got rid of the whole violence and everything, which is a bit disappointing, like they don't have the weapons and stuff utilized, but I think it still holds up fairly well.
From this perspective that it is a kid's movie, definitely an improvement due to the lack of violence and the lack of dark themes. It still has everything that made the first one cool, but with less of the more adult-oriented stuff.
I think that older TMNT fans will probably be a little bit disappointed by this one, but I think from what I can tell, everyone seems to like the first two pretty well.
The main thing that annoys me about this movie is the lack of Casey Jones and the addition of Kino.
Yeah, it's not like Kino's necessarily a bad character, but it's just the fact that he replaces Casey Jones is what's bad about it.
It's just awkward is all. I'm gonna go back over to go interview our contact, Keto, if you want to continue your tier list.
But of course. I know some people don't like this one all that much compared to the first one, but I still really enjoyed it as it was a deep part of my childhood, and I watched it a lot, so I'm gonna give it an A, just below the first one, because I think the first one's just better.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. What do you think of that movie?
That actually is my favorite of all the three original ones. It was just more fun. It had a great soundtrack, honestly. The opening song and that... it's a bop, and it kind of goes on throughout the whole entire movie. But this one also, they were fighting other mutants as well as Shredder, so that you kind of got the best of both worlds. You got to see them take on something new, so it wasn't just the Foot Ninja again. I forget their names. What are their names?
All right, it's Toka and Razar.
Yep, didn't remember that at all. But they were funny in how they fought, because they're not that great. They're just big and clunky. Donatello's voice actor in this movie was actually, to me, better than the one that they used for the first and third movie. The chemistry between him and Mikey was pretty funny. There were some good jokes.
How would you say it compares to the first movie?
I think it's better. It was a lot improved. It was less dark. Everything just flowed a lot better, and I felt like the plot was more cohesive.
Who's your favorite character?
Donatello.
It's kind of hard to find info on the behind the scenes of this movie, but it seems like the only reason the Turtles went back in time was because the director wanted the Turtles somewhere other than New York, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever.
The Turtles also look a lot worse in this movie because Jim Henson's company wasn't involved, as they were for the last two movies.
Look at his lips!
Despite being set in Japan, not a single scene was filmed in Japan, which isn't all that surprising, but they did end up constructing Japanese-style village set pieces, so that's cool.
There's really nothing else to talk about. The movie had a budget of $21 million, which is a little less than the last movie, and grossed about $54 million. So still successful. They made back their money, but it was less successful than the previous movies.
After this film, a fourth one in the series was never made. The Turtles would enter a long break from the theaters, probably due to the poor reviews and performance at the box office. But there were still some story ideas floating around.
One would have involved a fifth turtle named Kirby and a new villain called Spider. Super Shredder would return as a villain, and Casey Jones would team up with the Turtles again, armed with new electrical powers.
Whatever that means. And another idea was titled The Next Mutation, where the Turtles would mutate even further and gain special abilities, such as Leo getting impenetrable armor, Splinter being a muscular super rat, and Mikey being able to turn into a human.
That sounds very bizarre. However, there would be a short-lived TV series instead, starring the Turtles, titled The Next Mutation, but it was nothing like the previous movies described.
What the is even that?
It was worse. TMNT 3.
For some reason, this one doesn't have a subtitle, and that probably helps it be one of the least memorable TMNT movies that have been made.
It's actually the one I remember the least. I glanced at it a little bit before we did this review, and boy, this is a movie.
Yeah, I don't really know why time travel. Well, I guess I kind of do know time travel. It just has a really bad reasoning behind it. But the movie has some charm. Like, if you like the original TMNT characters, then this has the same kind of feeling of it. It's just not well done.
Other than execution, the whole idea behind the movie is a little bit strange. Time travel's a little out there, and the end of the movie, especially with essentially the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny ending when they might want to stay in the feudal Japan, is a little bit weird, a bit contrived, but overall there's still some to enjoy in it. There were still some funny jokes here and there.
Oh, absolutely! Shwing!
What does swing mean anyway?
A kid's movie, huh?
Huh. Yeah.
One good thing about this movie, though, is the reintroduction of Casey Jones.
Even if he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, that was a little disappointing. At least he had a few scenes in the movie, and it's good to see the actor back again. He does a good job for the character, and yeah, overall, the movie is what it is.
Bad.
I agree. All right, I'm off again.
This one I think is just kind of garbage. I think they could have done a lot better, considering what we saw them do in the first two movies. So this was very much a disappointment, and there really isn't any reason to watch it unless, of course, you really, really, really like the 90s feel. So for that reason, I'm just gonna go give it an F. I could be wrong on this one, could just be a D, but I'm gonna give it an F personally.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3!
Yes, the third one with no subtitle this time.
Which was a choice. This whole movie was a choice.
But what did you think of the choices?
I mean, did it make that much sense? No. Was it still fun? Yes, if you suspend your logic. We time traveled. I mean, there was no Shredder, there was no Foot Ninja. We were fighting in feudal Japan.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And it was okay. It wasn't bad. I still watch it. Do I watch it as much as the other ones? No. But I still own it and watch it because I think it's decent. But it's just kind of silly. Particularly the end.
What do you think of this movie compared to the first two films?
Who did they fight in the third one?
You know, I don't remember that movie as well as I thought I did.
It does not. I know the plots of 1 and 2 like the back of my hand. Number 3, it's here and there. I remember the Wet Willy scene.
It's Wet Willy time, Mo. What'em?
Do you have a favorite part to this movie?
The Wet Willy scene, because that's the most thing I remember.
Do you have a favorite character in this movie?
They're all kind of they were just there. Kind of made them all the same. I'll say Leonardo.
All right, and how would you say the final movie of this trilogy aged?
It's just kind of dumb by today's standards. It was dumb then, it's dumb now.
So they're aliens?
No, that's stupid. They're turtles.
In 2014, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would see a reboot. It seems like the main thing driving this movie was special effects. Motion capture and CGI was used to bring the turtles to life instead of practical effects, and because the movie came out 20 years later, CGI was used in a lot of scenes.
There are obvious similarities to the Michael Bay Transformers movies, probably because Michael Bay helped produce the movie. Everything in this movie is scaled up due to its rather large budget of $150 million. This allowed them to not have to worry so much about location or cutting shots like the indie films did.
A lot of time was spent planning the shots. Motion capture actors helped bring the turtles to life, but according to Alan Richson, the suit actors and the other crewmates were treated quite poorly, and the film did nothing to boost their careers in Hollywood. Feel free to read this Wikipedia section here describing it, but Alan at least does seem to be doing pretty well for himself now. That's about it.
Rathy, hold on. Here, there's some interesting pre-production details. In October 2009, Nickelodeon acquired all of Mirage Studio rights to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles property. In May 2010, Paramount and Nickelodeon enlisted Michael Bay and his Platinum Dunes partners, Andrew Form and Brad Fuller, to produce the upcoming film. In March 2012, Michael Bay unveiled that the film would be titled Ninja Turtles, and this caused controversy by stating that the Turtles would be depicted as from an alien race.
This announcement received criticism from fans within the community. Robbie Rist, the voice actor of Michelangelo for the first 3 films, reacted strongly to the creative change and sent a letter to Bay accusing him of sodomizing the franchise. He later acknowledged that his response might have been inappropriate given Bay's significant financial success.
Bay issued a statement assuring fans that the final script had not been revealed yet. Peter Laird, one of the co-creators of TMNT, urged fans to be patient and see how Bay's plans would unfold. He commented that while the concept of the Turtles being from an alien race could be considered an ill-conceived plan, it might offer the chance to explore the multitude of anthropomorphic turtles that fans had requested, whatever that means.
Michael Bay confirmed the title change from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to just Ninja Turtles on his website, reassuring fans that the Turtles would remain true to their original characterization and still act like teenagers, at Paramount's request to make it simpler.
Kevin Eastman, who is also a co-creator on the original comic books, enthusiastically called the film easily the best Turtles movie yet, and emphasized the importance of staying true to the source material.
In August of 2012, an early version of the script titled The Blue Door was leaked online. And oh boy, the script featured significant changes to the origins of the Turtles, revealing them to be from another dimension, consisting of turtle warriors.
Splinter was depicted as an alien as well from the same dimension, and Shredder was revealed as Colonel Shredder, a government agent with alien abilities to grow blades from his arms.
The Foot Clan would be renamed The Foot, an elite Black Ops team led by Colonel Shredder, and the film's focus would shift to Casey Jones, an 18-year-old security guard and amateur hockey player who finds the Turtles. In April, who is also 18, faces relationship troubles with Casey due to her upcoming internship with CBS, which requires her to move to New York City.
Raphael would take on the role of comic relief, unlike his traditional portrayal, while Michelangelo falls in love with a female turtle from his home planet.
Huh?
Paramount Pictures responded to the script leak by sending a cease and desist order to the website hosting the leaked material.
Peter Laird shared his thoughts on the script, expressing gratitude that it didn't progress further, as he considered it a poor representation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Now later, Michael Bay clarified that the leaked script was an early version written before the Platinum Dunes joined the project, and it had already been rejected.
The movie would eventually be filmed and released in 2014, the same year as Transformers 4, had a budget of about $150 million, and grossed $493 million at the box office,
making it the highest grossing turtle film so far, although maybe not the most successful.
Yes. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2014, possibly one of the more controversial ones. If I'd be completely honest, I can understand why people like this movie. It's a new generation, which is why people like it, maybe.
Could be. I mean, the special effects are alright.
Yeah.
The turtles look pretty real in some scenes, and the tone was more serious, probably for the fans of the comic books, maybe.
It's definitely more of an action film.
And the fans of the Transformers franchise will probably like this one.
But for me personally, I just didn't really enjoy it very much at all. I think it's just dumb movie. I mean, not saying the other ones were like, oh, this is pure cinema. It just happened that this is excessively dumb, maybe.
And it feels more corporate because it's no longer an indie. They're no longer indie movies, so that feels more corporate.
Especially because Michael Bay's involved. Not because like, oh, you shouldn't have like good producers or whatever, but because Michael Bay's involved, you can see the Michael Bay influence.
It's like they watched the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies and some of the cartoons. They just looked at enough to understand, to make them think they understood it. And then they adapted it. Oh, we're gonna update this, but they didn't understand what they were updating. updating and they screwed it up.
It's just a mess. I don't like it. I don't like the designs. I didn't like Shredder. I thought Michelangelo was by far the most annoying.
I don't like their look.
It just fell very flat for me, especially April O'Neil.
But that's just our opinion. I'm gonna go ask our contact.
This one, as we mentioned before, is controversial. I personally would almost give it an F, but because it has some redeeming qualities and it's not necessarily as bad as the third TMNT movie, I'm gonna give it a D. It's not good, but I can understand why people like it.
Our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2014 live-action reboot. What do you think of this movie?
So, I had high hopes, but it really wasn't that great. Like, even though it's more updated, the characters are flat, and it's like they're trying to include a bunch of tag backs to the old animated series, the old live-action series, and maybe even partially the comic books, but it didn't flow very well. The plot was kind of rushed, and Shredder looked weird. And so did the Turtles. We'll talk about the Turtles. The Turtles looked weird. Their noses were huge, and they were freakishly tall when they've always been short. They're supposed to be short. They're not supposed to be tall, and it was just strange. But no, it didn't really stick out that much to me. Honestly, I remember it even less than I remember the Teenage Mutant Turtles 3.
All right, how would you say this movie compared to the original trilogy?
We'll take the first two of those and compare it to this one, because the third one we just pretend doesn't necessarily happen. I think that at least the second one, Secret of the Ooze, did better with story, with including those funny moments, and also making the characters likable, and also just keeping our attention. The 2014 was a little bit boring in parts, actually. Megan Fox is in it, as she is in every Michael Bay movie for a while. She didn't do a very good job of being April O'Neil. I feel like she was just there to look pretty.
Is there anything about this movie that you liked?
No.
Fair enough. And how would you say this movie has aged? Because it's been almost 10 years.
I don't think many people remember it, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think it aged very well. I mean, it's more modern. There's that going for it.
Of these 4 movies we discussed, how would you rank these movies?
Secret of the Ooze, 1990. 2014, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Okay. Well, you haven't seen the 2016 movie, so we'll go call it quits here. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. I will be back.
Bye.
Bye.
As far as TMNT Out of the Shadows goes, there's really not much to talk about here. The production for the movie was basically the same as the previous movies, and since we spent so much time on that movie, we'll just keep it brief here.
Following the last movie's success, the producers wanted to get the next movie out ASAP, so they planned the next film to come out 2 years later in 2016, which it did, but this time the budget would be a bit smaller for some reason, maybe a little bit less confidence.
The movie had an almost identical feel to the previous movie, did have a bit of a goofier feel to it, and they introduced some characters from the 80s cartoon, including Casey Jones, Krang, Rocksteady, and Bebop, and Baxter Stockman. It also features the return of Shredder, so there's a lot of characters in this movie.
We already mentioned the budget was slightly smaller, specifically $135 million compared to the $150 million of the previous film. The movie ended up making less money as well, with a gross of only $245, almost exactly half of the first film. But even though it sounds like it made $110 million back, it's estimated that the studio behind the movie lost $70 million through extra costs such as marketing.
There was supposed to be a third movie, but because of the financial failure of Out of the Shadows, it ended up getting cancelled. TMNT Out of the Shadows is, in my personal opinion, without a doubt, the worst movie.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Overall, just a complete mess.
It's like they took everything from like the beloved cartoons or whatever, plugged into an AI, like, what's the thing that people like? Oh, let's go put that in the movie. It's just like so much stuff. There's Casey Jones, there's more Shredder, there's Krang, there's Rocksteady and Bebop, there's Baxter Stockman. I just think it was far too much and they didn't handle it in a good way, and there really wasn't a story to carry everything through.
They didn't realize that the big issue was in fact the writing.
Shredder not actually doing anything during the entire movie and then all of a sudden being locked up with Krang. Casey Jones wearing his mask for like maybe 10 seconds.
Also, the origin of Casey Jones is bizarre in this one.
Baxter Stockman being present for maybe 2 minutes of total screen time. I don't know, it didn't count.
And the Turtles sort of reset their character development from the first movie, it feels like. The first movie they learned how to fight as a team, and in this next movie they're just arguing again, so I don't know. They tried to manufacture some kind of conflict, but it just didn't work.
Overall, just a trash film. We could go into more details, but because it's supposed to be short, I won't bother.
Our contact doesn't have any information on this at all, so yeah, that's about it.
This movie's just garbage. I hate it so much. It's an insult to my intelligence. There's so much bad just going on all over the place, and they did such a poor attempt. It's like, the fact that they expected a sequel to this is very surprising. F tier. And that concludes the investigation on the TMNT movies.
And our tier list. Let us know what your favorite movie is, and if you do like Out of the Shadows for some unknown reason,
that's perfectly fine. Because in the end, we're all Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans.
We all got a bit of that turtle power.
Thank you, Raise Dashla, for joining us on this video. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for watching.
If you're interested, click this video over here. We think you'll like it.
Or this video over here, if you want a different kind of video.
And we'll see you over there. But until then, he's Mia.
And he's Keto.
And we hope you have a blessed day.
Bye! Bye.